Hello everyone, this is your Professor Danny Araneta Cabulay for the course Accounting Information Systems, and we are now in video lecture number 5, and we're talking about chapter 3, which is on ethics, fraud, and internal control, and we are now in part 3 of that particular chapter. So here we'll talk about COSO and internal controls. So what do you mean by COSO? Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. That's an acronym, okay? So for SAS, Statement of Auditing Standards number 78, COSO, which describes the relationship between the firm's internal control structure, auditor's assessment of risk, and the planning of audit procedures. How do these three interrelate? The weaker the internal control structure, the higher the assessed level of risk. And the higher the risk, the more audit procedures are applied to the audit. So the auditor will have to do more substantive testing as needed because the risk is very high. Okay? So yun lang ibig sabihin nun. So kapag ang internal control structure natin ay mahigpit, mas mababa yung risk. You don't have to scrutinize every single item. You just maybe have to look at maybe 10 to 20% and you will be satisfied. Okay? Because the incidence of fraud is very low. Pero kung yung internal control structure ay mahina, kulang sila sa policies, kulang sa physical controls, then tumataas yung risk na fraud could possibly happen. And in that case, you have to check everything, 100% if necessary. Okay? Yun ang ibig sabihin ng statement na yan. Now, what are the 5 internal control components in accordance with COSO and the SAS 78? 5 lang yan. First, the control environment. Okay? The company itself, the physical environment, risk assessment, and then information and communication. Number 4, monitoring, the level and quality of monitoring. And finally, control activities. Okay? Now, let's talk about the control environment. So this involves integrity and ethics of management, organizational structure, role of the board of directors and the audit committee, management's policies and philosophy, delegation of responsibility and authority, performance evaluation measures, external influences such as regulatory agencies and statutory agencies by the government, and policies and practices managing human resources. In terms of risk assessment, here we need to identify, analyze, and manage risk relevant to the financial reporting in terms of changes in external environment, risky foreign markets, significant and rapid growth that strain internal controls, new product lines, restructuring and downsizing, changes in accounting policies. I'll give you one example here. Alam niyo ba yung brand na Figaro? That is the local version of Starbucks. When they were growing in the mid-2000, grabe yung growth nila, very rapid. Talagang lumalaban sila sa brands like Starbucks. And they opened branches abroad. I think the first one was in Taiwan. At sobrang laki ng ginastos nila, it pulled down the company. Okay? Because of that, parang sinisi nila yung kanilang presidente for making that crucial decision dahil nagkandalugi-lugi ang Starbucks because of that foreign exposure to a foreign market. So again, that's something that needs further study, although it's debatable. Okay, so that was the cause of the rift between the president, Pasita One, and her partners, her investors. So they kind of kick her out and she's no longer the president of Figaro. She put up a new company, but that was one of the reasons because of the risk exposure of the main decision maker. Okay? On information and communication, The accounting information system should produce high-quality information which identifies and records all valid transactions, provides timely information and in appropriate detail to permit proper classification and financial reporting. They should also accurately measure the financial value of transactions and accurately record transactions in the time period in which they actually occurred. So, huwag kagaya ng um, Enron na futures market ang tinitignan. Okay? Market value. Okay? Mali yun. Now, on information and communication still, auditors must obtain sufficient knowledge of the information system to understand the classes of transactions that are material, how these transactions are initiated, and associated accounting records and accounts used in processing data. Okay? Now, the first two are actually the inputs. Now, the transaction processing steps involved from the initiation of a transaction to its inclusion in the financial statements, that is the process itself. And finally, the financial reporting process used to compile financial statements, disclosures, and estimates, and that would be resulting to your output. Now, this would show the general relationship of the AIS model that we mentioned earlier. On monitoring, the process for assessing the quality of internal control design and operation, this is the feedback in the general AIS model that we mentioned previously. Separate procedures, test of controls by internal auditors, ongoing monitoring, computer modules integrated into routine operations, management reports that highlight trends and exceptions from normal performance. Okay. Now let's talk about control activities. This would mean policies and procedures to ensure that the appropriate actions are taken in response to identified risk. Fall into two different categories: IT controls and physical controls. So for example, sa isang company, na-detect natin na pilferage is rampant. So what kind of new policies do we need to put in place? Or maybe let's look at the old policies. Why are they not working? Okay? So it has something to do, maybe baka minamanipulate din yung computer records. So yung inventories natin, hindi naapektuhan masyado kasi they are manipulated. Okay? But what about the physical controls? Like the security guards, the CCTV cameras, are they not working? Okay? So again, so you need to look at all of those. Okay? So control activities are important as part of internal control. Well, there are two types of IT control: general controls and application controls. When you talk about general controls, this would pertain to the entity-wide computer environment. Example, controls over data center, organization databases, systems development, and program maintenance. Meanwhile, application controls pertain to ensure the integrity of specific systems. For example, control over sales ordering processing, accounts payable, and payroll applications. So they are compartmentalized depending on the nature of the transactions, or maybe pertaining to a particular section or department in the company. Now, in terms of physical controls, there are 6 types. There's transaction authorization, segregation of duties, supervision, accounting records, access control, independent verification. For example, sino bang pwedeng pumasok sa IT room? Okay, kasi delikado doon, no? You can actually do a lot of override there. Or who has access to the warehouses where the inventories are located? So again, kung minsan makikita niyo, no, sa mga buildings or mga kwarto, unauthorized personnel not allowed beyond this point. Okay? So that's an example of an access control. Or bibigyan ka ng password to certain data sa IT. If you don't know the password, you are not able to access the data. Because if you have access to data, you can manipulate. You can destroy, you can manipulate, you can alter. Okay? Now, let's talk about physical controls. Transaction authorization, for example, this is used to ensure that employees are carrying out only authorized transactions. Who is authorized to process the bidding of suppliers? Who's authorized to do canvassing? Who's authorized to award the contract? Who's authorized to sign contracts? So that's an example of a physical control. So makikita natin yan in many companies, especially in vulnerable areas like procurement, or maybe in HR also, and sales and marketing. Now, when we talk about segregation of duties, simple lang to. One person should not be in complete control of a transaction. Kasi kung ikaw yung nag-requisition, ikaw rin yung nag-order, tapos ikaw rin yung nag-inspect, ikaw rin yung nag-approve, ikaw rin yung nag-release ng bayad, you have complete control of the transaction. Dapat at least two persons should be involved in a transaction, so there'll be checks and balances. Okay? In a manual system, that means separation between the one who's authorizing and processing the transaction and the one who's in custody of and record keeping of the asset. Okay? Now, in a computerized system, there must be separation between the program coding, the program processing, and the program maintenance. Okay? Kaya meron tayong data encoder, meron tayong systems analyst, meron tayong programmer, at meron tayong IT manager. Okay? So there are several levels there. Now, when we talk about supervision, this would mean a compensation of lack of segregation. Some may be built into computer systems. Maring hindi segregated yung duties, but somebody's checking on their work. And the checker is going to be stringent. The person who reviews is going to be very strict. Then, when you talk about accounting records, this would provide the audit trail. Mati-check natin kung saan nangyari yung pagnanakaw, saan nagkaroon ng problema. Then, access controls. It helps to safeguard assets by restructuring physical access to them. Then, we have independent verification, reviewing a batch totals of or reconciling subsidiary accounts with control accounts. Now, nested control objectives for transactions. For example, if you have control objective number 1, control objective number 2, or control objective number 3, so there will be a level of authorization and another level for processing and custody, recording into the ledgers. Okay, so there must be segregation of duties. Now, still on physical controls in IT context, you talk about transaction authorization. The rules are often embedded within the computer programs. Okay, the EDI, JIT, for example, you have automated reordering of inventory without human intervention. It's automatic. Okay, just in time or JIT, inventory management, is working that way. Okay, there's no need for human intervention because the computer will tell you at what point do you need to reorder. Ginagamit po yan ng mga clothing lines like Zara or Benetton or Forever 21. They use JIT. Segregation of duties. A computer program may perform many tasks that are deemed incompatible. Okay? Thus, the crucial need to separate program development, program operations, and program maintenance. Then when you talk about physical controls in the IT context on supervision, the ability to assess competent employees becomes more challenging due to the greater technical knowledge required. So that means the supervisor has to have superior competence over the person being supervised, not the other way around. Okay? Accounting records, the ledger accounts, and sometimes even source documents are kept magnetically or electronically. So all of these are into electronic format already. No audit trail is readily apparent, so that is going to be a problem. So you have to have everything on captured data. Okay. Access control, data consolidation exposes the organization to computer fraud and excessive losses from disaster. For example, fire. No, I'll give you a concrete example. In Far Eastern University in Manila, the registrar's record is protected by a fireproof vault Yung vault na to malaki, malaking cabinet siya. Doon nakatago lahat ng mga computer files ng company, backup records. Masunog man yung buong building, those records will be preserved kasi hindi siya tinatablan ng apoy, hindi siya nasusunog. Kahit yung heat coming from fire, it will not, it's heat proof actually. No? So, alam niyo naman kung gaano ka-importante ang records ng mga estudyante kasi yan ang buhay ng isang university, for example, student records. Okay? So that's an example of how to protect it from disaster. Okay? So ano ba yung mga disaster sa Pilipinas? Flooding, typhoon, fire, earthquake, okay? Because we are in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Then you have independent verification. When tasks are performed by the computer rather than manually, the need for an independent check is not necessary. However, the programs themselves are checked. Let's look at a case study. Okay? The multi-talented accountant. Benny Angeles, the Vice President of Mabuhay Property Management Corporation, a non-CPA, hired the husband of his best friend as chief accountant. So yung babae, yung wife ang best friend niya. Yung asawa nito, yun ang kinuha niya na chief accountant. Para sa Mabuhay. Rolly San Pedro, that's the name of the husband, set up the accounting system in the company, and this enabled them to produce monthly reports for top management. Benny, however, kept on asking Rolly about the cash position of the company kasi importante yung cash position. O magkano ng pera natin sa bangko? Tinatanong niya yun lagi. And he would receive weekly cash flow reports. Pero walang monthly bank reconciliation. Di ba importante yung bank recon? Binibigyan lang siya ng cash flow. Sir, ito po yung pera natin. Okay? So based on the bank records. The company has been closing huge contracts with numerous clients as the reputation of the company was very positive, thanks to its American president, John Cole. So one of their partners is John Cole, siya yung presidente, because he's very well connected and charismatic in his presentations and negotiation meetings, kaya nakakapagsara siya ng maraming deals. After 11 months, Benny became suspicious and went directly to one of the bank managers. May we have a copy of our financial statements? He was shocked to discover that the funds of the company have been severely depleted. Wala na pala halos pera. Contrary to his belief that they still had millions. Paano nangyari yon? Okay? So he hired another CPA who he instructed to conduct a covert audit on the cash in bank account of the company and discovered a major shortage of 59 million pesos. Yun ang nawawalang pera. Numerous checks were issued as pay to cash, signed by the president and vice president. Take note, the only two signatories in the bank check are the president, John Cole, and the VP for Finance, Benny Angeles. But their signatures were forged. Ibig sabihin yung mga pirma dun sa mga cheque na yun na pay to cash, puro pineke, palsipikado, ginaya. Okay? Sensing that he could be caught, si Rolly, yung chief accountant, went AWOL. Nagtago na siya. Absence without leave. And even the wife could no longer contact him. So, sabi nga nila, no? Flight is the surest indicator of guilt. Okay? Mukhang guilty siya. Okay? Bakit siya biglang nawawala? Okay? So, let's continue with the story. The wife disclosed to Benny that her husband acquired a property in Boracay. Wow! May beach property siya. At nakabili rin siya ng 2 luxury cars and an 8-bedroom house in Manila. Aba, pag 8 bedrooms ang bahay mo, mansion na yan. Okay? So, paano siya nagkaroon ng ganong kalaking halaga? So, sinasabi lang bonus ng company. So, patay mali siya si wife. Pero, doon na napunta yung 59 million na nawawala. Here are the questions I want you to answer for your pop quiz or recitation number 6. What went wrong here? 30 words. 3 sentences only. I want you to tell me what exactly happened here. Bakit nagkaganyan? Second question that you need to answer, how can it be prevented? Maiiwasan ba sana yung nangyari? Pwede bang hindi sana naganap yon? Paano? Tell me in 30 words only. Okay, so that's about 3 to 4 sentences also. Okay, so answer this in the comment section below the YouTube video. And please take a screenshot and send it to my messenger as an insurance that you actually replied. But please answer in the YouTube channel comment section first. Okay, then take a screenshot. Okay, so this ends now chapter 3. So I hope you enjoyed the lecture for chapter 3. I'll see you around. I'll be uploading soon video lecture number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for the next 2 chapters. Stick around. Bye!